You know, in our series about dropouts, one of the children that we followed was Danny, a child in Baltimore, a homeless child. I met him right down the street from the school that he attended. He was living in a homeless shelter. His 13 brothers and sisters were scattered. His mother had an addiction problem, was functionally just incompetent. The woman just had so many problems. She could not care for Danny. And Danny raised all kinds of red flags because I think he only went to school out of the 180 days or so that he was supposed to. He went to school maybe 40, 50 days. Now, if you ask me, why does that child not read? Why doesn't he, why can't he sit still in class? Because the child was living a nightmare. So, Rothstein argues, the notion that simply by improving their education in school they can achieve at equally high levels is at best questionable. You need to also improve the quality of their health, their living conditions. Now, Congress bought into the No Child Left Behind Act because it sounded so good to say no child will be left behind. And remember, Senator Kennedy, George Miller, Democrat of California, John Boehner, of course, President Bush, were very well intentioned. These were not people who were cynical in approaching this problem that we have of the undereducated in our society. But they were wrong in assuming that schools could do it all. Most people think that because it makes or seems common sense that what children learn is solely a function of schooling are mistaken. For example, one major contributor to the achievement gap between poor and wealthy children is housing. If you have a school where children are moving in and out because their families can't afford housing, because they can't pay the rent or have to double up with other families, the school cannot do as effective a job as it can with children who don't face these problems. There was a study in Texas, and I've been unable to track it down, but it was several years ago, which found that if you simply reduce the rate of mobility of black children to the rate of mobility of white children in this state, you would narrow the achievement gap by 15%. That to me is remarkable. And this is information that policymakers, educators have in front of them. This isn't hard to dig up. This isn't hard to find. The research, the analysis is there for everyone to see. And yet we're blind, or at least many of us put on blinders. Lawmakers certainly are seldom held accountable for facing the facts and doing something totally contrary to what those facts suggest. By not dealing with the housing crisis today, where urban rents have risen much faster than the income of the working poor, and without addressing the issue, the notion that simply by having high expectations we can equalize achievements, the achievement of mobile children who are living on the streets in some cases, we are really missing the opportunity to once and for all create a consensus, not one that says we're going to ask you to pay more taxes and not hold you responsible, or not hold the people who spend that money responsible for making sure that kids' lives improves. But to not, I mean, remember that saying, if you think education is important, try ignorance. I think we all know what that means. If we want to put a dent in narrowing the achievement gap between children of different races and social classes, we need to operate on all these fronts. We need to understand that it is not just schools and teachers. We need to understand, as I know all of you in this room understand, that you all have a role to play.